take one, Mark.
Well, he came over and asked me in 1999 would I help him with his presidential campaign, and I said yes, and he was shocked. He said, "Why'd you say yes so quick?" I said, "Nobody else ever asked me." So, I was an impeachment manager during Clinton's impeachment trial, so it's an odd way to meet somebody. But my job was to go to the floor of the Senate every day and tell the Senate why they ought to kick Bill Clinton out of office, and he sat there, and I think he liked my style, and he came to me after it was over and says, "I'm thinking about running in 2000. I said, "Sign me up," because he's a legend in the military. I've been in the military 33 years, retired a couple of years ago, so I knew him sort of a legendary figure. I didn't know him that well, but then I started traveling with him. He's funny as hell. He's got the energy of 10 people, so the rest is history. He's a mentor. He's like a brother. All I can say is I admire who he is and what he's done. He's lived one of the most incredible lives any American. When it comes to writing the history of the Senate, he's going to be in the first paragraph. When it comes to naval aviators and patriots, he's right at the top. He's helped me a lot. I've traveled all over the world with him. I've been to every crap hole you can go to. John's an interesting guy. You read in the paper, 500 protesters killed in blank stand. John says, "Let's go." I said, "Why?" Sounds interesting. So it's just the most unusual guy I ever met. All I can say is that the three amigos, we enjoyed our time together, but I learned a lot from John. When you go overseas with him, he has access to every leader in that country because he's a legendary figure throughout the world. In cultures where warriors are respected, he really does get a lot of attention, and by osmosis, you sort of learn through him. So I have traveled all over the world, every conference in the world on national security. One of my favorite stories is John is just, I think he misses being shot at. So we're going to, we go to Iraq and Afghanistan like 42 times, and we go to places you probably shouldn't go, but we go anyway. But there was a riot in one of these stands I was telling you about, and John said, "Let's go." And I said, "Well, why not? Let's don't go." But we wound up going. So we land, and the ambassador comes and meets us, and he's sweating profusely, white as a ghost. And I said, "This is not good." So we get in the car, and he tells us, "This is really dicey. We may wind up closing the embassy." John's just upbeat as he can be. He can't wait to meet the government to chastise them for killing their own citizens. So we get to the embassy, which is in an old hotel with a big disco ball. This is Soviet architecture. So you got Marines in full battle gear. You got the shredder going when they're putting all the documents through. They're taking the picture of Bush down, and John says, "Hey, how's it going?" And I said, "John, it is not going well." That's John McCain. And we stayed there and met with dissidents, and John spoke up on their behalf, and thank God we got out of there. Joe Lieberman, John McCain, and Lindsey Graham, we were named that by General Petraeus. The thing about John and Joe you need to understand, there was only one Democrat that voted against leaving Iraq, and that was Joe Lieberman. John McCain's running for president. The Iraq war is about as popular as a toothache. And John said, "No, we can't leave. We got to win." And he stood behind President Bush. The surge, adding more troops at a time when everybody wanted to get out, was not really good politics, but John believed passionately, along with Joe Lieberman. Joe Lieberman deserves a lot of credit because he kept us from pulling the plug on Iraq at a time it had been a complete disaster. But that's how the three amigos were named. It was by General Petraeus. Absolutely. He can be an asshole one minute and your dearest friend the next. But the thing about him is that he loves you. And we've had some fights. We got one going on right now. There's no doubt in my mind he loves me and I love him. He has a loyalty that's missing. He's not my political friend. He is my friend. And he is so passionate about his causes, where this campaign finance reform, the military reform, he truly is motivated by passion and love for this country. Of all the places I've gone and all the times I've been with him, there's one that sticks out the most. In 2007, John was 5th in a 4-person race for the Republican nomination. He went from being the front runner to like a nobody, carrying his own bags. We were doing events with 10 people, and everybody had written John off. So in July of 2007, General Petraeus asked Kim and myself to come over to speak to the troops in Baghdad who were going to re-enlist, and about 300 or 400 were going to get their citizenship expedited by serving in the military. It must have been 130 degrees. We're in this big old Saddam palace. It was packed from the rafters with thousands of soldiers coming to hear John talk. And you had two groups. One group that was going to re-enlist in a war zone, another group that was about to get their citizenship, and on the front row there were two empty seats with boots in the chair. And General Petraeus said, those two got killed a couple of days ago. They're going to get their citizenship posthumously. When John spoke, you could hear a pin drop. He spoke from the heart, and he stayed around and had a photo with everybody that wanted to have a photo. And I've never been so hot in my life. We're stuck on the runway trying to leave in a C-130. Coming over, he was thinking about dropping out because he'd run out of money. After meeting the soldiers and talking to General Petraeus, we left saying the No Surrender Tour. That's where it came from. They're not quitting, we're not going to quit. So we started the No Surrender Tour, I think, in someplace in New Hampshire. We went to American Legion. There were like 10 people there, and it was steak night. Bottom line is, he fought like a tiger to get back in the game in 2008. He stood behind President Bush not to give up on a war that was unpopular, and he did it because he understands what happens if we lose. But seeing those young men and women in the middle of the battle, not quitting, that's John McCain. You can go too far with anything, but he has earned a reputation that people will take things from John they wouldn't take from anybody else because they know he's passionate, they know he's an American hero, and at the end of the day, they know he's a good man. You know, he's the guy that normalized relationships with Vietnam, he and John Kerry. So after being in jail for 5.5 years, being tortured, he's able to let things go, unlike anybody I ever met. He'll fight like a tiger, be down on you 1 minute, then he's ready to let things go. He's always lived his life looking forward. I think the key to John McCain, to me, is just he wants to be relevant. He wants to be in the middle of the fight, and he forgives, and he can fight. He's incredibly funny. I mean, stupid funny. Same stupid-ass jokes, but he tells them all the time, and I still laugh. You know, there's no water in Arizona, the trees chase the dogs. You know, everybody in America says one day you're going to grow up to be president unless you live in Arizona, where so-and-so and so-and-so ran, and they didn't get to be president. Same old stupid-ass jokes. But he's got a cleverness about him. I can't tell you half the stories. You know, I'll write a book one day. It can be lonely sometimes when you're like wanting to say we need more troops in Iraq and like nobody's with you except Joe and me. You know, I think John, if he's right, he doesn't mind being by himself. He has the confidence of his ideas. But yeah, you can get isolated in this job, but John has always been about staying engaged, being relevant, and one of the things that have kept him, I think, energized is, you know, we do a lot of traveling. We go to places where Americans' presence needs to be known. As you can tell, he hates Putin. You know, one thing I like about John, most people he hates, I hate. I guess if you're in jail by yourself, you miss people. If I spent 5.5 years in jail, I'd be looking for a crowd too. He just, you know, John thrives off people. The one thing I can tell you, when we travel, he always wants to take younger members of the Senate with him and the House to show them something. You know, John wants a legacy not only of just passing bills, but also, you know, ingraining in the Republican Party in particular a sense of the Ronald Reagan view of the world, the shining city on the hill. It is our destiny to lead the world, not to be run over by it. I buy into that. He is the most poetic, gifted speaker for American values I've ever met. When he speaks, I still cry. He can describe America in a way worth dying for. I mean, he's in love with America. There's a romance between him and America that's gonna last to his very last day. He reads ferociously. He'll read like 10 books and, I'll watch a movie. He's a passionate reader. He enjoys his, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Simple diet. Tireless. I mean, the goal is to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in 3 different countries. If you travel with him, it's like the, Foreign Legion Death March. Tireless, passionate, and a lot of fun. And he makes sure that you get something out of it. So when we go to these meetings, all the attention's on him, and he makes sure that every member of the delegation gets to ask a question. He'll introduce that person to the leader or the defense minister or the president or potentate or whoever they are, and he'll make sure that they know something about you, that you traveled from your state, that you took time away from your family to be here and learn. He is very attentive to the people that travels with him. He's a friend. I mean, in Washington, if you want a friend, get a dog. John McCain's my friend. I don't have a dog. Bottom line is, I talk to him about everything. We don't always agree. I've got a job to do. He's got a job to do. But I never doubt his motivation as to why he's doing it. And there's no vote he could take would ever change my opinion of him. I have learned over the last 20-something years, I've seen him when nobody else is around. I've seen him with his back against the wall where he was completely dealt out and come back. I saw him help President Bush when nobody else would. I saw him, before I got here, he helped President Clinton get authorization to go in Kosovo to stop the genocide. He tried to help President Obama on immigration. The one thing I can say about John McCain, when the campaign's over, it's over. We tried to have a relationship with President Obama. We were going to stand behind him when he drew the red line in Syria. We flew up to the White House on Labor Day weekend, I think, and talked to President Obama about using military force against Assad because he used chemical weapons. And John was willing to stand behind President Obama, so was I. But he's also took on President Bush. He challenged Rumsfeld to be fired because of Abu Ghraib. The one thing about John, the Detainee Treatment Act is one of his great accomplishments. I was there with him. But he does not believe America is a place that tortures people. He does not believe torture works. He believes that's against the values of a professional military and against the goodness of our country, and that was one of his finest moments. All I can say is that John's voice won the day. I've been a military lawyer for over 30 years. In the military, it's about, when we capture somebody, it's about us. It's not about them. I don't care that the Al-Qaeda or the Taliban would cut your head off. We're not going to be like them. Our goal is to be different than our enemies, to show the world a different path. There are plenty of people who would cut your head off. There are not enough people who would give you a fair trial. So John has been passionate about the way we treat prisoners because he's been a prisoner. He's passionate about the values that make us different than our enemies. So at the end of the day, it was his voice above all others that got the United States Senate and the country as a whole to rally behind the idea that what happened to Abu Ghraib and other things in Iraq was wrong. And nobody else could have done that because most Americans, are pretty upset at this war. Look what they do to us. You're worried about them. You want to give them rights. They're not going to give you rights. And John was able to say, no, no, no. Don't compare us to them. Compare us to our ideals. What are we fighting for? And no one else could have done that but John McCain. I got a call from Rick. I knew he was having problems. He wasn't his old self. I thought it was probably something related to melanoma, but when I heard the diagnosis, you could have felt like I'd been hit with a bat and just shell-shocked. And, I know it hit him hard, but, basically every major thing I've done in politics has been with John. And it hit me hard, and then there's a time when he said, all right, knock it off. No more woe is me. We're going to take what time we got and use it well. The traveling, the ribs, the stupid jokes, the ability to pick up a phone call and vent, the man. But here's what I would say. what he's left behind will endure long after he's gone. He's left a sense of purpose in me and others. He's talked about an America worth fighting and dying for. So when that day comes, and I may go before he does, but when that day comes, I'm going to dedicate myself to continue these fights and to continue the attitude. It is about the country, it's not about you. It is about serving cause greater than yourself. I think it depends on who you ask. I think most Americans are going to remember him as a patriot who was willing to die for his country, a senator that would take on his own party, that exposed truth to power, that tried to take broken systems and make them better, a reliable voice in difficult times. Some people are going to remember him as a guy that didn't always agree with them, that stood in the way of their agenda on the left and the right. His family's going to remember as a loving father and a good husband. I'm going to remember him as a dear friend, and nobody's going to say he was a perfect person. We're all going to say he was a one-in-a-lifetime, unique American icon. When they write the history of the Senate, as I said before, he's going to be in the first paragraph. Well, John's spare time is thinking about something else to do. John loves to read. He likes movies. We watch a lot of movies together. He loves history. He's a student of history. I think a good day for John is having a bunch of people around him he finds interesting, have a good meal, and maybe a drink or two, and sit down and just share thoughts and ideas. John loves people, and part of it probably goes back to being isolated in prison. But he loves to read. He likes movies. More than anything else, he likes engaging with people. John has got an oasis there in Arizona, the ranch. And whether you want to or not, he will tell you about every bird there. And I just sit there and say, okay, there are like 89 different species of birds, and they're the same as there were the last visit, but he's obsessed with birds. Here's what I would do. I would let John interrogate prisoners at Gitmo by describing to him how many birds there are at his ranch, and they would all spill their guts after a while because it's painful. I think all the Gitmo detainees say, I'll talk, no more birds. One of the best things that ever happened to me as a person, as a senator, a member of Congress, is meet John McCain. Some of the best times in my life have been with him, fighting fights that were hopeless but worth fighting, being with his wingman during his presidential campaign, sharing moments with him when nobody else was around so you could see the true nature of the man. My life has been enriched. That's enough.